All righty. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today for the fourth in a series of Lunch and Learn sessions to provide awareness for domestic violence. Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that the session will be recorded. In the next week or so, I'll send out some information on how to access the link to view the recording. And I did confirm with our communications department, they're actually going to post these recordings on our department YouTube page so that you guys will have access to those recordings from there. For those of you who need closed captioning, you can access that through the More tab on the far right at the bottom of your screen. Click it, and you should have three little dots, and it should open up options so that you can have closed captioning to be activated for you. For consideration of all here, please mute yourself so that we don't have background sound competing with our speakers. And we will be asking you to complete a short survey at the end of the session. It should pop up at the end of the session when you close the meeting. I'll send the link again with the recording information in case you have issue getting the link for the survey. Sometimes, of course, devices won't allow that little pop-up to come up afterwards, and it's not won't automatically populate the survey for you. And of course, it is an important tool for us to track how the training went and what kind of value you guys have in being able to do something like this lunch and learn. And do you have any additional questions before we get started? Feel free to put them in the chat. So let's go ahead and move on to our check-in. One of the things that we are very avid about in the department is checking in at the beginning of the meeting. And sometimes it's a silly question like, what's your favorite Halloween candy? But today, we want to kind of know who we're talking about, who's in the room. So if you would go into the chat and put who you are, your location, like where are you, what cities, town, state, if you're at a facility working or a probation office, let us know that. Are you a service provider or are you seeking services? We have had people from as far away as Alaska, California. We had New York and Chicago in the room yesterday. So we're getting people from all over the country because we've shared this with all of our NAVAC, OVC, all of our allied partners from all over. We've had some national presenters. And today we have an amazing person from NOVA, Northern Virginia, not National Organization for Victim Advocacy. We have Tiffany with us from the Bethany House. And we also have a couple of my team members. At least one of my team members is in the room. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I guess it's afternoon as of now. We are so grateful to have all of you here today, and hopefully you've joined us at some of our other lunch and learns. This has been a really great opportunity to learn more about some of the amazing services that we have available to us. So thank you all for being here, and a special thank you to our speaker today.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's all from my team that is in here today because they are all out and about for domestic violence awareness and providing services to various folks at the moment. And they may be sliding in a little bit, but they're not here at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I am going to turn things over to Miss Tiffany from Bethany House for her to take over and do her thing and share with us. And I'm super excited to hear about everything that they have been up to.
Good afternoon. I am Tiffany Santana. I'm the Executive Director at Bethany House of Northern Virginia. I'm very excited to be here, very honored to be here to talk about this organization that I have loved for many, many years and have been blessed to serve also for several years as well. I want to share a little bit about what we do at Bethany House, how we serve, what makes us slightly different from some other organizations, and how we actually work in conjunction with several other organizations. First, Bethany House empowers women and children escaping domestic violence by providing safe, short-term housing and trauma-informed services. We more and more are looking for ways to help our community because domestic violence is so prevalent and pervasive, not just here in Northern Virginia, but across the country. We're always looking for ways to expand our services beyond just shelter and just services and beyond just people in our residential program. So we provide a variety of different kinds of services. One of the things that makes Bethany House unique is that we are a privately funded Christian ministry. What that means for us is that we don't have some of the restrictions that some of the government funded programs have. So we don't have jurisdictional restrictions. We can accept women from Fairfax County where we're based, but we can also accept women from all over the country and very often do. We are a longer-term comprehensive care organization. So many of the organizations that we partner with are 30-day emergency shelters, and they can provide a service that is necessary that we can't. They can accept women almost 24/7 at the drop of a dime and give them 30 days of safe shelter away from abuse. What we do is very often we're the next step for those organizations. Sometimes we're the first step for a woman who's escaping. We offer longer term care, 4 to 6 months in our safe house, which offers a woman a greater chance of rebuilding her life after abuse, getting herself together after she's made the big leap to escape from domestic violence. Our benchmark programs are our Family Assistance Program, which is the program that works primarily with women and children. Our Empowered Women Program, which works primarily with women who have no children. And then our Imminent Danger Rescue, which provides services to women who need to get out quickly, who need to have a place to be before they can transition into our safe house. Sometimes there's a window of time where we know a woman's going to transition out into permanent housing and another woman needs to come in, and we know there's a short period of time between that happening. So we'll take women in and do hotel stays and begin to provide services to them that way. And that's our Imminent Danger Rescue Program. Our helpline is a 24/7, 365 line that we have available to people to call who need help escaping domestic violence, who may need safety planning, or who even need help with how to serve their friends, neighbors, family members, to get recommendations for how to help them and support them. It's now a service that we operate in conjunction with the Virginia statewide hotline. So they field our calls and send information to us so that we can be in contact with those who may need help and services. One of the things that I really love about our helpline also is that we often get calls for people who are experiencing general homelessness for a variety of reasons, and we can provide resources to them as well. So it really is a helpline for anybody who calls. We make sure that we try to give resources to everybody who calls. As I mentioned before, we provide short-term housing in our beautiful safe house. Those are actually pictures from a safe house that was recently renovated. We really like to, as quickly as possible, create a sense of normalcy for the families who stay with us. So the safe houses are very much like homes, and we even have employed the help of a trauma-informed interior designer. I didn't even know that was a thing until we met them, but everything within our houses is designed with someone who is healing from trauma in mind. So all the colors and the shapes and the textiles are designed to help facilitate healing. During the 4 to 6 months in our residential program, we provide trauma counseling in the form of evidence-based groups and individual counseling. And our clients receive counseling weekly, group and individual counseling weekly, to help to begin to heal from some of the trauma of abuse and to develop new coping skills, new skills for continuing to build a life for independence. One of the things that we have begun to also provide is community counseling as well. So women and now men who are not necessarily members of our residential program can also receive counseling. And so this is something that we're really excited about, because there are men who are experiencing domestic violence as well, and there aren't as many resources for them. So that's one way that we have begun to provide services to male victims of domestic violence, is through providing community counseling as well. During the 4 to 6 month stay in our residential program, women and their children also receive what we call life advancement programming. This is really exciting because it is really the part of our programming that really does the work of helping women to rebuild their lives after abuse. So we offer life skills classes and professional development. We offer financial literacy courses and confidence and empowerment courses, fitness and wellness, self-care, any legal assistance, and through our life advancement program, any of the basic needs that a woman has in order to begin to build her life, we provide that also. So gift cards for shopping for groceries and connecting partnerships and resources to make sure that a woman's needs are met while she's working on her transition into independence. That happens through our life advancement programming. Because we're faith-based, we also offer Bible study through our chaplain and provide our chaplain as a resource for spiritual counsel, for prayer, just an extra voice to talk to. One of the really unique features of our program is our aftercare program. So once a woman transitions out of the safe house and into her own permanent residence, she can continue to work with Bethany House for 2 years to continue the work that she started while she was in the residential program. So she can continue our life advancement programming, she can continue her counseling program. And really, one of the things that we found through having aftercare is that it really dramatically decreases the chance of women going back into abusive relationships when they have 2 years of continued support beyond their stay. We have about a 95 to 97% consistently rate of women reporting that they don't return back to abusive situations. And I believe that's in large part because of that longer term support that women get in the aftercare program. So that's a feature that we really love at Bethany House. And community outreach. So doing things like this is just paramount to making sure that we provide the right services to women, that we forge the right partnerships. But also, as I mentioned before, our community needs help. And it's not always help in the form of a residential program. So through our community outreach, we also offer community support groups to men and women. We are in planning for helping abusers. Sometimes, because our mission is to eliminate domestic violence one family at a time, we really can't do that without taking into account all of the family. So part of what we are beginning to plan for is ways that we can start to help abusers so that they can reframe their thinking, their behaviors, their life, so that we can really put an end to domestic violence. So that will happen through our community outreach portion of our programming as well. I want to share with you a video that highlights some of what we do. You'll hear from some of our clients, some of our former clients. I feel like they can always tell the story much better than I can, having experienced what they have experienced. So I want to share that with you.
3 months after we started dating, I got pregnant with my daughter. And then it was towards the end of the pregnancy that the verbal abuse started. And then it was after she was born that the physical had started. And I just felt like this is my life now.
Yeah, I was living in my country, Morocco, and he was living here in USA. We met each other online. He was abusing my son. That is more hurtful part. He was even he take for him shower. He was abusing sexual my son, and he was threatening me to take him away from me. Yeah, he is from another country too. What about if he take him to his country? How can I find my son? He was kicking me, and I was telling him, if you try to hit me, I'm going to scream extremely loud, and then numbers, they will call police. And he is hurting me, but most of the time he does like to put marks on me, you know. He just wants me to live with him as a slave.
He would hit on me in front of his friends to show his macho-ness. There was a specific time that actually led me to want to leave. We were in the kitchen. He was cooking. I was going into the refrigerator to get something, and he was just constantly calling me names, fat, and he unloaded all the contents of the refrigerator on me. Opened every jar, poured it on me, everything in the refrigerator he had poured on me, and the last thing was a bottle of hazelnut creamer. He poured it right on top of my head and refused to let me take a shower. At this point, I was ready. I couldn't handle anymore. My parents had gotten some information about the Bethany house through their church. I went to some of their support groups for codependency, abused women. So I started to kind of hear other stories and hear other people's lives to know enough that this isn't how you should be treated.
So there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of thought, because a woman essentially has to pick up and leave her life completely and start all over, sometimes with nothing in their hands. That's not easy to do. We've heard so many stories of women who've come to us who just left. They left everything behind, grabbed their kid, grabbed their keys, and left with nothing. And so if you can imagine all of the creature comforts that you have every day that you may take for granted, shampoo, a wallet, a cell phone, a warm bed, a car to drive. Those are things that women leave behind in exchange for the chance at life.
Bethany House is special for many reasons. One of the reasons is that we offer long-term stay and give the women enough of a program and time to recover. But another issue is these women have been crushed. Their spirits have been damaged, their self-image has gone. And what we allow and what we encourage is a meeting with Christ so that they can understand that they really are special. They are made in the very image of God. He loves them, He will provide for them, and their future is bright, is what we want to be able to share with them. So He will provide not only for today and tonight to keep them safe, but for their eternity.
My counselor, I was so closed off when I started going to the Bethany house. It took some time. She had to kind of break that shell a little bit, but she did, and that's when a lot of the healing began.
It's very important for women to get out of abusive relationships. What we know is that domestic violence almost always escalates, and far too often escalates to homicide. And so we don't want women to take the chance of believing that it'll get better, or that he won't do it again, or that tomorrow will be a different day. If you're being abused, the best thing you can do is to get out and to get help. And there are resources. You do not have to be afraid. You don't have to believe that you're alone. We're here for you. We're here to provide you with the help and the resources that you need.
Yeah, thank God I'm around people who care about my situation.
I love them. I think they have an amazing program. I think their staff is just warm and amazing. The Bethany House saved my life.
I've seen that many, many times. It still gets the best of me. One of the things that I mentioned in the video was about domestic violence homicides. And here in Northern Virginia, this past year, we have seen so many. They happen every year, but I'm actually grateful that in this year, we see them more. We've had coverage of them more. It's something that needs to be addressed, and it's something that we need to focus on, that we need to be aware that happens quite often. Here in Fairfax County in 2022, 50% of the homicides, 50%, 50, in Fairfax County were domestic violence related. And that speaks to the severity of the issue. One of the things that we've also begun to do in this past year to begin to address that issue is to begin to reach out to the families of those who have family members who've been victimized by domestic violence homicide. We've begun to talk to them about what their needs are, and we'll soon be offering as well grief coaching for them and opportunities for them to come together and to share their experiences, to get resources from each other, and to teach us some of the things that they need so that we can better serve our community. So what Bethany House tries to do is do more comprehensive work to make sure that we really try to tackle the issue of domestic violence from as many angles as we possibly can with the resources that we have, and really pull together different coalitions from our community to be able to try to help us to do that, which is why coming and speaking and talking to people and reaching out to our community is so important, because we often find various groups of people with various talents or connections that can come together. There's lots of synergy across things that people can do to begin to tackle this problem. It's a big problem, but I think that if everyone chips in what they can, it's a manageable problem. It's something that we can really work effectively to change. So that's what I have as far as what Bethany House does. I would love to answer any questions that anyone has, or hear any comments or suggestions, anything like that.
And of course, feel free to unmute yourself to ask any questions. And Tiffany, I will ask, you're a faith-based nonprofit. How do you guys pay the bills and keep the lights on?
We, from a variety of different aspects, because we do everything. Most of what we do comes from our community. We don't get a lot of government support, although we get some, but we write grants. We get a lot of support from churches, a lot of support from individuals. We do major events, fundraising events throughout the year. What we really try to focus on is making sure that those who are supporters of ours, who are in our coalition, sign on to partner with us monthly, so that we have an idea of what's coming in and what we can allocate resources to. So a variety of different ways. It takes a lot of different ways to be able to bring finances in to make sure that we can do the work that we do. Always have to be creative. We even work with consultants to see what's new and what's out there and what people are doing. The best avenues for making sure that we reach people who want to support the cause. So quite a bit of work. I saw in the comments the question, how does our referral process work? That's such a great question. So a lot of the clients that we receive come through our helpline. And by helpline, it's not just the phone line, but it's also email and text, because the phone is not always the safest place to be able to communicate with us. So typically, we also get referrals from social workers and other programs as well. But typically, if we have space, we usually only have space in our residential program for 11 humans, combinations of moms and kids, right now for 4 to 6 months. So we stay at capacity quite often. But when someone calls, if we have space, we do a quick screening to make sure that we have the resources that they have. When people come to us experiencing domestic violence, there's so many layers and there's so much overlap of a variety of different kinds of services that they might need, whether it's substance abuse or intensive mental health services. So we make sure that we have the best care possible. That's number one. If we feel like we can provide the best care possible for them in their situation, they'll come in, they'll do a quick intake that discusses our program, that lets them know where they'll be staying, how they'll be living, what the program entails. And then we'll bring them into the safe house. Each woman has her own room. She doesn't have to share with anyone. She shares with her children if she has children. And so we try to make it as easy and seamless of a process as possible so that she can work really quickly to get back to some semblance of normalcy, or get to some semblance of normalcy for her. So that's a great question. I hope I answered your question.
Mm-hmm.
Of the men you provide services to, are there many immigrants? No, actually. And we don't have a lot of men. And for men, we only do community counseling. And we've done one community support group. We actually don't have a lot of immigrants, men. Mostly they are American-born men who seek services. We've had 2 men who've reached out who are not native-born for services, but for the most part, they're American-born.
What kind of a population are you working with in Nova? I mean, who's typically looking to come into your shelter? Is it something that is demographically designed based on financial need, or what do the clients look like? I mean, are you getting the affluent people that are trying to escape and be safe and don't, because the abuser has controlled all the finances, they're without, or what are you getting?
That's such a great question. We often say that domestic violence doesn't discriminate. And so we see that in who comes to us. We have women who are new to the country, who've come on marriage visas, and the marriage turns out being abusive. And so we have to work very closely with some of our legal partners to make sure that those women get safe and that they get the protections that they can get under the Violence Against Women Act. We have women who are professors, who are well known in education, and whose public life is pristine, but who are being abused at home daily, and everything in between. We see all kinds of women from all kinds of backgrounds. We're faith-based, but we see women from all kinds of religious backgrounds or no religious background. It's something that we never know who's coming. Every group of women is completely different. And like I said, from different demographics all over the country. We just recently had a woman come from New York. They've come from as far away as Colorado, Louisiana, different age groups. At one point, we had in the residence, our youngest was just turning 21, our oldest was 62. So we see all kinds of women come through.
other questions do we have from the chat? And feel free to unmute yourself as well. Since we had a conversation yesterday about Red Rover and pets, and they threw out a statistic that blew our minds that said 97% of victims are considering a pet when they're considering coming into shelter, that their choice to leave is partially determined by how do I care for a pet because of the fear of harm. So what does Bethany House have in place to help victims take care of their other fur baby family members or lizards, which would be my case, along with 3 fur babies?
Yes, that is such a great question because that is something that we see very often. And we actually just made a partnership with a veterinarian who has a network of people who will foster pets because we don't have a place, a facility to keep pets. So she has a collaboration of people who will foster the pets. She can do short term at the vet office because they do board pets there. But she also has a network of people because she also has been trained and has studied domestic violence, saw that there was a need, knew that she could help, and began to form a coalition of people who would foster. So that's something that we're unrolling in the next couple of months, probably the beginning of the year, because we're still working out the details of how quickly we can make those moves when we hear that a woman has pets. But it's something that we were getting so many calls about that we didn't want to continue to have to turn people away or find an organization wherever it may be that could help. And so we're excited about that partnership that's coming down the pike. That's really exciting for us because that'll help us to be able to help those women. We know it's a barrier because your pets are like your kids and you don't want to leave your kids behind. We know that in some domestic violence situations, the pets are abused as a means of abusing the partner. So we just want to make sure that we can provide those services as well. Any community resistance to the house due to stigma? Yes, unfortunately. We just had a house donated to us in 2022. And in order to convert a single family home into a safe house or a group home in our county, you have to get a special exception for congregate living. And in that process, you have to notify the neighbors, which is kind of counterintuitive to what we do because we're trying to just slip in and hide in plain sight and be confidential. And so we did have some resistance from our neighbors who didn't fully understand what we do and who didn't understand the great painstaking work that we do to make sure that we are safe, that we're confidential, that we're quiet, that we blend in just like any other neighborhood. So it took a lot of work. We had some community meetings. We went out and we talked to our neighbors and reassured them that you won't know we're there unless you really want to find out. You know, our women come in, they're quiet, they work during the day. They just want a safe place to be while they're getting on their feet. And so we were able to turn some hearts. We had one kind of stubborn family that, was still a little resistant, but I imagine that once they see that house finished and that they see that it's not going to be any different than any other neighbor that you have, then that will be paid as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do y'all provide transportation? Like if
Yes.
someone, okay.
Absolutely. So transportation is one of our biggest needs, and we provide transportation through a variety of means. We have begun a love affair with Lyft and Uber. We have some drivers that we contract that we know very well, and they'll come. But we also provide them with gift cards for Lyft and Uber, gift cards for public transportation as well. Transportation is one of the big hurdles for women and their kids, because a lot of times either they came to us without having any access to their transportation, or they had to leave their cars behind. And so transportation is something that we definitely take into account and that we make sure that we provide. So a lot of our budget goes to making sure that transportation needs are met. We also have a company vehicle that we take women to places to if necessary, or that will pile all the families up into to go to social mentoring activities and things like that. But yes, transportation is a huge need that we meet through our life advancement programming.
Okay. Thank you.
You mentioned a pantry.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So our pantry is primarily for personal items and household goods. And so we have a pantry in our office, and the women can either come and shop, or they can send a list, and one of the case managers or volunteers will take that list to them at the safe house. The aftercare clients can also visit the pantry as well to shop, but we have everything from shampoo and conditioner to laundry detergent, diapers, wipes, all of those things that you need just for your everyday living and for maintaining your home. We keep those in our pantry. We don't want any barriers, especially for the women who transition into the aftercare program. We don't want finances to be a thing that sets a woman back and that sends a woman back. So if we can help out with very expensive needs like cleaning supplies and bedding and household goods and personal items, we want to make sure that we do that. And also those pantry items are for the women and children in the safe house as well. So we have toothbrushes and kids' toothpaste and all of those things that we collect and keep on a yearly basis to make sure that the women have what they need.
So if we've collected hygiene items over the course of the month of October, y'all could use some of those?
Absolutely. We sure can.
We
Send
will
them
make
on.
sure there's lots of our sites are collecting those. We said, hey, let's just collect these items during the month of October, and then we will distribute them to various sources. And since you guys were so gracious to come and share with us, we would like to share back with you.
That would be fantastic. That'd be fantastic. That really helps. One of the things that we have recognized with aftercare is that making sure that women are building as they're building themselves financially. Because as I mentioned, we have financial literacy classes, we have first-time homeowner classes. Like, we really want women to be financially stable and set. But as you're building, you know, having a car breakdown, we all know, like having a car breakdown or some unexpected financial woe that pops up, if you're not fully stable, that really can be a reason why you would go back and suffer just to make sure that you have what you need financially. So those are the types of barriers that a pantry or our aftercare program can really help women to get over so that they can continue to progress forward.
Yes, yes. You know, you're one paycheck away from disaster to some extent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Or one event, you know, just one financial event that you didn't plan for as best as you could or couldn't plan for because you just didn't know it was going to happen. Those kinds of things can really set you back. So we want to make sure that we take those barriers away as well.
And what kind of recommendations do your counseling and groups provide for women about healthy relationships, what they are? Because some women and some men as well have a hard time recognizing what that looks like because they may have never lived it. You know, the kind of partner they have now that they have left is the same kind of partner that was in their parents' relationship or other family members. So their examples have not been real healthy. And how do you help them understand what that looks like? What's that process look like?
That's a great question. So in one of the first things that we deal with is helping women understand their own identity and who they are and their self-worth and their self-value, and them deciding within them what's valuable. So we have some counseling and some groups around just personal identity and making sure that you understand who you are. But we also have counseling around setting boundaries, about certain types of relationships like narcissistic relationships and recovering from them. Some can get very specific. And so we definitely approach relationships from a micro to macro in our counseling, starting from the woman herself. Just like you said, what are some of the traumas you've experienced? What were some of your familial patterns? What are some of your ideas of what relationships look like? Has that been beneficial to you? And helping women work through those types of things from a micro position first, and then working outward. So now that you have a better understanding of who you are, the kind of behaviors that should go on in your life, the kinds of boundaries that you have to set to make sure that you're safe, your children are safe, your mental health is safe. Now, what does that look like in relationship to the outside world and to other people? And so I love having that approach of making sure that women are grounded in who they are, and then helping them to navigate now these different kinds of patterns that you may have experienced or that you may have learned over your life, and how to do life differently in a way that benefits you, with this new understanding of who you are. And so we try to do it from a pretty comprehensive platform.
Sounds absolutely amazing. And I know a lot of people who would benefit from that, thought process.
Yes, yes. And those groups are some of the groups that we also offer to the community. Those recovering from narcissistic behaviors, domestic violence 101. Those aren't just the programs that we offer to our women in the residential program. Those are some of the support groups that we have as well for the community at large. And it's not just for people in our local area, because most of them are on Zoom. And so people can tap in from everywhere, and they do, from in-state and out-of-state, from our local area, and from other places as well. So that's been an exciting benefit of having to work through a pandemic, is that we've gotten more creative in our reach because of technology.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, you guys are only in Northern Virginia. Is there thoughts on expanding to other areas
I would
in the
love to.
country? I mean, do we
Yes.
want to replicate this model?
I would love to, absolutely. My first goal is to have at least one safe house in every district in our county. So we're at 2 of 9 right now. So I got 7 more here. But if an opportunity opens up for us to be in Maryland or in DC or West Virginia or somewhere in the region where we can begin to branch out, absolutely. Because I feel like, for one, there just isn't enough help for the demand. There just isn't across the country. There are far too many people that we can't serve adequately right now. And definitely, I would love to have this model in other places. And I'd like to expand our model beyond just the safe house model. I think we need all different kinds of real estate for all different kinds of circumstances, specifically men. Number one, I want a safe house for men. But number two, I would love to have individual residence for families. Like if a man comes who is escaping domestic violence and he has children, male and female, I want them to have their own space, where they can be a family in a safe place, where dad doesn't have to worry about, living with other people, with his kids, where he can feel safe and comfortable and at home. And so these are things that we're thinking about, things that we are putting out feelers and radars and things like that. I have a house that I've been looking at for a long time that I'll just put my mark on because I want it. But absolutely, I would love to be able to expand because, like I said, there's so much demand for comprehensive domestic violence services. And we just really have to do more because there's just not enough.
Yes, yes. That, the need is so great. And you guys obviously have a model that works well when, you've got better than 90% of your folks stay gone.
Yes.
And don't go back to that situation and move on to a healthy, safe life.
Yes. And one of the things that I didn't share, our founder, we've been in existence since 1979. So we're one of the oldest in the area. And our founder was so visionary and revolutionary. This model that we use was her original model from 1979 of providing this comprehensive care. She was one who did a variety of social service and social projects in the community. She did an elderly health program. She established one of the first homeless shelters in Washington, D.C. She did a tutorial program. She was a former educator. She was just a woman about helping people. And this model of making sure that we just don't provide just safe shelter, but also connecting women to resources to help them rebuild, that was really her model. And for her to have that vision in 1979, when domestic violence wasn't even a term, people weren't talking about it. It was a personal matter that people dealt with in their homes, that really at that time, law enforcement wasn't really looking at as criminal in the way that it does today. So I'm really proud that we can continue what she saw even back then and continue to build on that model. So it's definitely something that we want to expand on, especially with technology now. There are so many considerations that we have to make with technology, and there are good and bad elements of technology that can make our job easier, but also make our job difficult. But we really want to focus on figuring out ways that with technology, we can expand our reach and do more to help people as well. So yes, 100% we want to do more.
Amazing. Amazing. Do we have any other questions from our audience, from our participants? Either unmute or pop it in the chat, because we still have a couple of minutes left. Or we can...
Carolyn talked about in the chat about trauma-informed interior design. She and I both, I had not heard of it until this organization came to.
I didn't know that was the thing either.
I didn't. And this was our their largest project. They had really focused on rooms of children who had experienced sexual assault, molestation, working on their bedrooms and making their bedrooms more trauma informed. And so this project that they did with our renovation of our current safe house was their biggest project. And I thought that was fantastic.
And I have went back and shared our thank you along with the QR codes for our notification program and our DOC Victim Services website. And so Sandra asked, why do you think the numbers have risen?
The domestic violence homicide numbers. I think that might be what you're talking about. Yeah. You know what? I'm not really sure. I know that there has been an uptick since the stay-at-home orders during the pandemic. There was a decline briefly around 2022, 2023 from what we saw. I'm not sure why right now we've seen such an uptick in Fairfax County, especially. Fairfax, Prince William, Prince George's County, Maryland, in our area, we've just seen more. I'm not really sure why. It's something that I definitely want to, as data comes out, as some of these cases are still being investigated. So, and we are seeing some common threads with the types of relationships, what has happened in each situation. So I'm not sure why there's been an uptick. Unfortunately, in the two most recent that we've seen, women had protective orders. There were warrants, and there was a warrant in one case where the gentleman wasn't picked up for months, from November to March, until she was killed. So there are some things to look at as far as that's concerned as well. But I don't know why the numbers have risen. And
the homicide numbers for 23 are down.
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
Right. Why has there been an uptick in 24?
That pandemic has shifted a whole dynamic, and it'll probably take another 3 to 5 years before that settles down to, okay, this is the reality now.
Right, exactly. Gwyneth asked about our founder. Our founder is Doris Ward. She actually passed away in 2014, which is actually the year after I started. I started at Bethany House as a volunteer, and I volunteered for about 7 years before having the honor of being able to assume this role. But she stayed involved in the organization almost all of that time, from 79 up until the beginning of the 2000s, probably till about 2009 is when she started pulling back a little bit from the organization, but she stayed involved, heavily involved all that time.
Mm.
Are they doing any kind of education in the schools? Yes, in the form of anti-bullying and age-appropriate conversations about that in elementary school. And I know a lot of the high schools, we actually partner with a lot of middle and high schools. They are doing awareness groups. They are bringing people in. The high schoolers themselves are actually reaching out and formulating clubs and teams and bringing us in and other organizations. But I know that in some of the physical education courses and in some of the psychology courses in high school, they are starting to do a lot more work around healthy dating and what that looks like. And so we are seeing more of an education at each level about bullying, about anti-violence, about domestic violence and sexual assault as age appropriate. I think we can do more, but I think the fact that we're starting to integrate that into the school system while kids are young is just super important. And I'm glad to see that there's a movement of that. And at the high school level, like I said, I'm glad that the high schoolers are taking the initiative to recognize that there's a problem among their peers and that they're being proactive about ways to do something about it. So I think that's really great too.
Yes. You know, teen dating and boundaries. What do those look like, especially where technology is concerned? Talked to someone who was telling me that, she's had those conversations with her teenage daughter about, he can't call you so much. He can't do this, that, he's encroaching on your personal time and your time with your family and time you need to be doing homework and that kind of thing. And then they were riding down the road. They were going somewhere and her phone pinged and her mom looked and it's like, oh, he checked my location. And she like pulls over on the side of the road to have another conversation of that's not appropriate. He's stalking you. Well, Mom, we didn't use an app. I just shared my yeah, he doesn't need to know where you are every minute of the day.
Right.
And she's like 12 or 13. And how do you have these conversations with these kids that have grown up with these devices on what is healthy? And peace line and things like that are very, very important.
And
I'm glad you guys are being a part of that work.
Absolutely. And those are some of the challenges when I talked about technology, about how it's a catch-22. There are some things with technology that have been fabulous for the work that we do, but we also are tasked with making sure that we stay informed about what's coming out and that we think critically about how those things can be used to a person's detriment in the way of abuse and domestic violence is concerned. So our challenge in this field has changed some, especially over the last 15 years or so. So it forces us to make sure that we stay educated about technology, that we understand how to talk about it, especially with families, and that we do the really practical security things here. Looking for things like air tags and things like that we didn't have to think about 10 years ago, but those things are being used
if safe house location gets out, it's unhealthy for all of your residents, not just the one that's being targeted.
Absolutely. And our house manager, because we have a live-in staff member there. So we have to make sure everybody's protected.
Definitely. Are all hearts and minds clear? Have you gotten all the answers that you needed? Do you have any kind of comments for Tiffany and their team? Please let us know because we are just about done. We're almost out of time, guys. Alrighty, I am going to turn the recording off and stop sharing my screen. Feel free to hang back and ask a question if you need to. But thank you everyone so much for being a part of this today. Thank you, Tiffany, for bringing Bethany House to the forefront for us. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are much more interested about what you guys are doing up there in Nova.
Thank you so much. It's been such an honor to be here. I just love this organization. And so anytime I get to share what we do with our friends and family across Virginia, especially, it's just really exciting. So thank y'all.